Hey, this is Laura, and welcome to another episode of Check Me Out. And I've got my bright, colourful jacket on today to match the brand that I am having a chat with, and that is Anihana. And if you don't know Anihana, you can see their beautiful little soaps. And well, I'll let Sophie talk about who you are in a second. But beautiful, bright coloured brand. I've always loved looking at it. You can see it pop out in the when you go into stores and yeah, and we would love to hear the story of how Anihana started and if you ask you a few questions, Sophie. So thank you for coming along.
No, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, Anihana, it's a very unique name. Can you tell us about the history of Anihana and where it started? Because I know that you originally had a different name when you first started the business.
Yeah, that's right. So it all started back in 2016. So I was a florist by trade. I was a florist for 10 years. And I was working for a lady in Auckland. She owned a florist shop, but also a soap manufacturing business. And I was just about to go on maternity leave. I was 8 months pregnant with my first baby. And my boss wanted to sell the manufacturing side of the business to concentrate on retail. So I jokingly went home to my husband and said, should we buy the business? And yeah, a few months later, we had a new baby and a new business. I really loved the products. I used to sell them with the flowers. So I was completely in love with the products and how good they were and how they were made. And then for the first year and a half, we were a contract manufacturer. So we just continued to make product for my old boss and other kind of small gifty shops in New Zealand. And then we created our own brand, which was called ahhh. So it's AHHH. That's the sound you make when you get in the bath at the end of the day and relax. I think having a new baby and a business, it was quite full on and stressful. So my escape at the end of the day was to jump in the bath once my daughter was asleep and relax and say and we make soaps, bath bombs, and then as the business grew, and my children grew. I got quite passionate about making sustainable products, so we launched shampoo and conditioner bars as well as solid moisturizers in compostable packaging. And we were the first shampoo and conditioner bar to be ranged in New World in grocery. So that's something I'm really proud of, making it quite accessible in the sea of plastic bottles of shampoo on the shelves.
Yes.
So yeah, we were ahhh for a couple of years. We rebranded nearly 2 years ago, and we became Anihana. Anihana is our daughter's middle name and also my husband's late mother's maiden name, and it's the Maori translation for Anderson. So it's a really special name for us. It kind of represents our family values as a business, and I love that it has that connection of how I was pregnant with Bo when we started the business, and then my husband also joined the business when we rebranded as well. So it's got a lot of family connection to it. Even though
That's wonderful.
I wasn't very keen to change the name at the start, but
What was it that got you kind of over the line to change the name?
it was definitely a process. I was very attached to R. It felt like renaming my toddler at the start, like because R was my baby as well. There was a few problems with R, like we couldn't trademark it, and people didn't know how many H's and when they were searching it. So we started looking at. Someone suggested when we did the rebrand that we also look at a name change. And I think I went home to my husband and said, I'll think about it, but I'm not going to change the name. But I can't imagine it being anything else now. We came up with quite a few names, and there was one that I really liked. And when we doing trademark searches, and we just couldn't get it, so just randomly one night I said, "Oh, what about Anihana?" And yeah, and then it just happened, and I can't imagine it being named anything else now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful name, and I can totally understand like going through trademarking is something that a lot of businesses don't actually think is super important, because I think that they don't see that they can scale so much. They sort of like, I'm just a small business. Am I ever going to be big? Everybody has the dream, but part of that process before you even get big is to go, okay, I can see that, that dream, I better be ready for it. So going through the trademarking process is really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you went through the rebrand. What was that like? Obviously, because the packaging that you have now is so beautiful and lovely. And how long was the process, and how many, I guess, iterations did you go through with your design team?
Yeah, so I think it was quite a quick process. We we did a capital raise, and one of our shareholders actually owns a design company. So we worked really closely with them, and they were the one that suggested the rebrand. I really loved our packaging, but there was just something that we just didn't really show kind of the brand's personality. Like, we had really fun, bright products, and we wanted the packaging to reflect that. So I put a lot of trust in the agency and the designers. It was more about what we wanted the brand to stand for and show, rather than what kind of we wanted the packaging to look like. And then once we'd gone through, I guess, like more of a branding exercise, then they came back with a few different options. I think there was about 4 or 5 different variations, all with the same name, but very different kind of styles, different fonts, different colors, different illustrations. And as soon as I saw this one, I knew it was the right one. It was kind of like they'd been able to read my mind of what I wanted and how I wanted the brand to look and feel. I think I just couldn't really articulate it well. So I think I was very lucky working with the agency that we worked with, and they kind of just understood exactly what we wanted. And it was quite an easy process once we knew. Like, as soon as I saw it, I knew that was the one that we wanted to go with.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's a sign of a really good designer as well, is just that you can pick what is inside somebody's head and go for that. And that feeling that you get when you see that, it's quite a neat feeling, isn't it? When you go, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I had in my head, because a lot of people find it really hard to articulate what it is that's going on inside here. So it really is up to the designer to be able to pick that, especially if you've never done a brand before, if you haven't or a rebrand. It's giving a brief to someone, and someone sits down and say, right, what do you want? And so how do you even say that?
I think, I just put all my trust in them. They're the experts. They were talking about things that I had no idea about, like typography. And I think the designer, he calls himself a typography nerd, so he loves all that stuff. But yeah, I just knew, like, once I saw it, I knew it was the right one.
Awesome. And when you went through the rebrand, how did that change your business around? Did you find that you've had more opportunities with retailers, or did you find that it was better received on social or anything like that?
Yeah, so since the rebrand, it still baffles me that it's the same product, just different packaging, and it kind of went from us begging retailers to the other way around, where we were getting approached by retailers. So we went from, I think, 350 stores in New Zealand to 3,500 in Australia and the US within 18 months. So it was, I think a lot of that was down to the packaging. I think it really kind of resonated with the consumer, what the consumer wanted, and it definitely stands out on shelf. You can't miss it.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, I think a lot of how far we've come is down to the packaging, for sure. and my
Awesome.
husband's sales skills.
That's right, because I think you can have a wonderfully beautiful and amazing brand, but it is supported by the hard work and, and those like clear systems and things that you have in place. And when you first started compared to now, are there any goals or any kind of dreams or visions that you had way back when, like that kind of ring true to where you are now?
There is. So when we started, it was kind of just me and a few others, and I was making the product myself. And I guess I never really had big goals and imagined it would, like, our products would go this far. But as I saw it starting to grow, there was always like stores that I could imagine the product being in. So I had a bit of a tick list in my head of products where I thought they would look really good and people would love to see them there. So and then they started happening. So it was quite cool. Like our first store in Australia was Priceline, and when I lived in Australia, I loved Priceline, and I just thought, oh yeah, our products would be really great there. And then the other one was Target in the US. So yeah, and then it kind of just started happening. So not really kind of big goals, but just kind of stores that I knew that the products, like in my head, that I wanted to see them there.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned obviously Australia and the US. And I remember seeing a post I think you had done on social of this massive container getting ready for your first export order. And I thought, oh, that's such wonderful news and awesome. What was that like exploring different markets other than New Zealand? Because I think a lot of brands see New Zealand as being a small market. We're a great market for launching new products, but obviously there is Australia and that. So what was that like going through the process to get overseas?
It was we always knew we wanted to launch in Australia after New Zealand. So that was always in the plans, and we got the great news that we arranged in Priceline. So we we had long-term goals of, like, we knew the next market after Australia we would look at the US, because there's such an opportunity over there, and I think the products would do really well. We randomly met a lady that used to be a Target buyer, and she had a consulting business. We just ended up having a conversation with her about presenting the range to the Target buyer, knowing that because we're such a brand new brand and no one knew of us, most likely the buyer will say no, but at least they might remember us next time. That's kind of what my husband was like. That's the process you've got to do. You've got to, keep getting in front of them, knocking on the door. So we didn't really expect to get into Target stores, but yeah, we were all quite shocked when the buyer said, yeah, we'll put you in 400 Target stores, and it just happened to be the same time that we were launching in Australia. So we had to do 2 big pipe fill orders, and at that time we were making like 100% all our products by hand by ourselves as well.
Wow.
And I think we were in some sort of lockdown as well. So it was a pretty crazy time. So yeah, I think looking back, I think I'm still really glad that we took the Target opportunity. And it wasn't full distribution. Like if they turned around and said the whole 1,800 stores, there's no way we could have done it. It was hard work, but it's kind of worked out really well for us, because now the US is going to be our focus for this year. But awesome. Yeah, it was very hard doing those 2 massive orders by ourselves.
I can just imagine. I suppose it was round the clock making everything.
Yeah, I was doing night shifts. We've got 2 children now, my husband and I think because of COVID, we had to do split shifts. So we had like a day shift and everyone was separated, and then like distancing, and then I would go in the evening and with a couple of others and do the second shift. And I lived like an hour drive away from the factory now, so I was like driving home super late, and yeah, it was hard work, but yeah, it feels like ages ago now, but it wasn't.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, COVID and all of that definitely feels like a long time ago now, but it was really only a year ago still. So yeah. And just around the manufacturing, are you still doing everything by hand, or when you got these large orders, did you find that you had to sort of change your process of how you made the soaps and things?
We do still make quite a bit of our product ourselves. So we make artisan soaps, bath bombs, but some of our products like the shower steamers, they kind of took off a lot better than we were expecting. So they've kind of gone a bit crazy, and it's quite funny because when I first started making shower steamers years ago, we only had two resin molds, and they were just like a single cavity. Um, and and I think up until the first kind of Priceline order, we were still making them by hand with these two molds. So we quickly had to like figure something else out. So we got these trays made with 6 cavities in each, and we were filling them and flipping them out. But that still kind of wasn't fast enough. So we do have a contract manufacturer helping us make those now, but they're still handmade the way we made them in the trays.
Yeah.
But just so we can concentrate on the other products like the handmade soaps and things like that, which are a lot more, a lot harder to try and scale. So we have to kind of say no to a few retailers on those soaps because we just haven't figured out how to scale them at the moment.
Yeah, and that must be really hard because when you people present you there with these opportunities, and it's quite a thing to have to sort of go, okay, no, that's not what we can do yet. But it becomes down to quality, doesn't it? And that, it's quality over quantity, and that. So I can imagine like having to make those decisions. I mean, it's great to have all of these decisions to be able to say no, and that is awesome. So I can imagine, that it is tricky to kind of decide where and when and all of that.
Yeah, I think like I am definitely quite I don't know the word, but strict on. I'm constantly kind of testing products from other manufacturers, and I guess if it doesn't pass the Sophie test, then they have to go back and make it. Like I think we're really fortunate we found an awesome manufacturer that kind of puts the same amount of love in the products that they're making as we do, and that's really important to me as well. But yeah, it's definitely a priority of mine is make sure that we don't lose any of that quality that we and the love that we put into the products as well.
Yeah, awesome. Now, obviously, there'll be a few people who are watching this who, are just starting out in the business. And would you have any advice for startup FMCG brands?
Um, quite a bit. I think ask for help is always my biggest piece of advice that I've learned because at the start, it's great to kind of do everything yourself at the start and learn everything because you get to learn different parts of the business, but you get to a point where you just physically can't do everything. And I always found it quite hard to ask for advice or help. But you'd be surprised how many people that are willing to help other small businesses, especially in New Zealand. I think everyone kind of is really like open to helping each other. I used to hate networking, but then my goal this year was to kind of put myself out there and network a bit more. And I found that awesome, like talking to other people that are in the same situation as you in FMCG, because it can be pretty hard sometimes in fast-moving consumer goods. My husband, he's been in FMCG for over 10 years, so he's had a lot of experience and knows a lot of people. So even just learning from him has been amazing for me because just the knowledge, and he's constantly kind of reminding me how brutal the FMCG market can be. But I would say definitely network and ask for help. Find people going through the same things as you. Share your stories. yeah, it can be quite lonely, I think, as a business owner. So the more you can get out there and talk to people going through the same things, the better.
Awesome. Oh, amazing. Hey, look, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us this morning, Sophie. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love your brand. As you can see, I have my own here. But yeah, thank you so much, and best of luck for the amazing future that Anihana has in front of it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fun.